Thank you and good afternoon. I had an opportunity to take a helicopter tour. This is something that obviously in the last couple of weeks, a lot of this has played out with the media. We've followed these stories very closely, but looking to see the tour and see the reality up there, it's very concerning to me. I know they're making some progress, but to see the water spewing out, it looked pretty contaminated to me. So I'm very, continue to be concerned about this. That's the reason why when this was playing out in the last 4 or 5 days, I felt like we got to bring all the resources we can and bring a federal response. So in terms of the federal response, where we're at now is a unified command with EPA and DEP. And so I want the best and the brightest on the ground. This is something that's unfortunately could have been dealt with probably over the years, but I'm not looking to assess any blame or anything else. I'm here to do everything I can to help the county. And I don't think it's just Manatee County. This impacts the region. If you take a look at Tampa Bay and you go up around Tampa and back through Pinellas County, I have part of Hillsborough I represent, but I lived in Tampa, in the Tampa Bay area. It's a wraparound with these currents and everything. So as we, continue to put water out in the bay, and I know sounds like that's the best reality, and I think they have made a big difference, reducing the gallons, millions of gallons, I guess, down 100 million or something like this in the one reservoir. So it's a big issue from that. I am concerned about the threats to public safety, homes, as well as businesses. And then, of course, marine life. I'm very concerned about the impact on that. We know what that does to our communities. I really been as a member of Congress long enough. I really hate to see what's happened in terms of just the algae bloom and red tide, not just here, but across the state, like Okeechobee. If you go from Orlando down or you go over to Stewart or Fort Myers, I've been there and I know what happens. So when I see water flowing into Tampa Bay, frankly, it makes me sick about it from my standpoint. I just don't like to see it. I guess as a young kid growing up next to Lake Erie, it was so polluted you couldn't swim in it. If you could, or you caught a fish, you couldn't eat it. I don't want to go back to those dark days. I'm not saying we are here. I think we are making some progress. I do want to also just thank the governor for coming down and responding. I have been talking with the heads of DEP as well over the last 3 or 4 days. And that's just when I decided they're doing everything they can. But let's get the best and brightest and let's get this addressed. When you got 1.3 million gallons, 1.3 billion gallons of water in 3 different ponds, it's concerning to me that gets done. And again, like I said, everybody might be well-intended, but this is something that's been going on for too long, and we're going to come together, I think, collectively between the county and the state and the federal government to make sure we get this resolved quickly. So again, we have called in the EPA. We're looking at this as a joint command, a unified command. That's how they're defining it. And we're going to bring whatever the best and the brightest to be able to deal with this aggressively. I want to be hopeful, optimistic, but just the fact that we're running water into the Tampa Bay is not a great thing and not a great place to be at. But the reality of it is it seems like it's the right thing to do right now. But I'm going to be continually monitoring this and do everything I can, again, as a resource to work with the county and the state to fix this and fix it as quickly as we can. That makes good sense. I don't have all the answers as it relates to that, but that's why I wanted to get EPA involved as well, because they probably have the best and the brightest in terms of resources. I don't think personally it's a question of dollars and cents. I think we're going to figure out what it's going to take, and we're going to make sure we've got the resources to fix this permanently, not a patch. I'm committed to making sure this gets fixed permanently, because this is something that's been going on for a long time. The other thing is that I think that the company, HRK, needs to be held completely responsible. And so we're going to do to make sure, I'm sure DEP and others will make sure that they do whatever they have to do to make it right, if they can, ideally. But again, my goal is to work with the elected officials and resolve this. I just hated to see the last week or two this continue to seem like it got worse in a sense, but then seems to get better. But I heard even last night, early this morning, there was potentially another breach, in the northern wall. And so, I just want to stay very focused on that. They can probably give you more details about it. But again, I want to do everything we can. In terms of the helicopter flyover, it's just my observation. Again, I'm not an expert, but you can see in and around where the water's spewing in there. And they talk about Bishop Harbor being more pristine. But even looking at that, from my standpoint, it's not where it should be. And of course, around the port, I hate to say it, if you go a couple of miles in each direction, you see, to me, looks like algae bloom or something, but that's something for the scientists to determine. And as I looked at other water in the area, of course, from where the water's coming out, you can also see Tampa Bay, and I know that through currents that come down through the Mississippi, and because I've been following red tide for 20 years, that can have a big impact on all of Florida. And again, it gets back to public safety and marine life, and we see these manatees dying and what it does to small businesses and restaurants and everything else. So I'm very passionate. I want to be a part of the solution. I want to work with the team. And I'm very committed to making sure this happens as quickly as we can. So with that,
We'll turn it over to County Administrator Scott Hopes, and then after that, Chair of the Manatee County Port Authority, Commissioner Bellamy.
Thank you, Jake. I'm Dr. Scott Hopes. I'm the Manatee County Administrator. And on behalf of Manatee County government and the Board of County Commissioners, I want to thank Congressman Vern Buchanan. It has only been 4 days since the County Commission declared a state of emergency. On Saturday, as you know, the governor declared a state of emergency for Manatee County as well as Hillsborough and Pinellas. And as of last night and this morning, with Congressman Buchanan's assistance, he was instrumental in us not only having an EPA representative from the federal government, but we have the Army Corps of Engineers. Their entire team is here. They are out independently assessing the status of the retention pool in the area. With the addition of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, added additional drones which have thermal imaging capacity. So we were able to get a better idea at how the retention walls are progressing through this. And by the end of the day today, when the additional pumps come online, we will more than double the volume of water that we're pulling out of that retention pool, so that we could be looking at anywhere from 75, we're at about 35 million gallons this morning per day. We should be looking at anywhere from 75 to 100 million gallons a day by the end of the day. So you can see how we can more rapidly deplete the volume in the retaining pool, which is at greatest risk. With that, I'd like to introduce Commissioner Reggie Bellamy, who also is the chair of the Port Authority, and he will give you the Port Manatee report. Commissioner Bellamy.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reggie Bellamy, the Manatee County's Port Authority Chairman. Port Authority remains fully operational. We have posted port security at checkpoints to assist law enforcement and ensure that anyone conducting port business has access. Thank you.
With that, we can take a few questions before we have to get back to business here. Kim? Kim?
In the reservoir at this point? I know last night by 8 p.m. we expected to be under 300 million gallons, which is right now.
We are probably just shy of 300 million gallons. And what I will say is that by the end of the day today, with the Army Corps of Engineers being on site, we will have a much clearer picture of the current status. And at that time, we get a briefing from the team of DEP, the EPA, Army Corps of Engineering, and the emergency management folks that are here from the state. We will be able to release an update later this afternoon.
Is that just the one pool you were talking about, that volume of water, or is that all of the pools?
The only pool that's at risk is that southernmost pool where we have identified breaches where we do have some uncontrolled release of water, but that water is flowing the pathway that had been predicted, and we were able to maintain that course.
So initially when the HRK presented their report to, initially,
A lot of residents right now who are very worried. At what point do you think people will be able to finally breathe a sigh of relief again?
As I said, we need to reserve that. We have an entirely new team that's doing an independent assessment. Up to this point, we have been relying, and DEP have been relying on HRK's third-party engineering team. Now we have the Army Corps of Engineers in here with their engineers, and we will have an additional independent evaluation with all the technologies that they have brought in. They have incredible expertise, and as I mentioned, if it weren't for Congressman Vern Buchanan, we would not have those assets on the ground.
They're raising the question, the third-party engineers' assessments up until this point. Is that why you brought in the Army Corps?
No. This has become, as you know, this has become a very focused, both local, state, and national issue. And we have had teams in from Governor DeSantis that have been evaluating it. And when Congressman Buchanan got engaged, it accelerated getting those federal assets on the ground for everything from moving pipe to strategy. There is a whole engineering team now that takes up the conference room where we have some of the best minds and scientists that are focusing on that. With that, we'll have a better idea of the risk assessment. You can imagine if we go from 35 million gallons a day to 100 million gallons a day or more pulling it out, you can see how within probably 48 hours, if all those flows continue, we will be at a situation where we will no longer have that risk of that full breach, which would send that 20-foot wall of water across. Just one more question.
because initially HRK presented their case to the county commission and said that the ground had risen by 5 feet in 48 hours. That was one site. Is that the site of where the current breach is, or are there other multiple potential breaches in the wall?
The question is regarding the breaches on the eastern wall. The most visible, of course, is at the foot of the southeast corner, where you see the water coming out of the side and then flowing into what has created this flow to the north. There is an area at the top of the berm around the middle of the eastern wall that they recognized an extrusion of that wall pushing out about 10 feet of the center line. And then thermal imaging last night from the DEP drones identified a number of sites, with one concentrated site in the northern portion of the eastern wall where the temperatures indicate that there is water intrusion into the wall at that point.
Another breach means the evacuation zone and the potential for flooding if we have a full flood.
Currently, the models that we've used for the evacuations assumed a full breach of the entire remaining 300 million gallons. So that has been accounted for.
Congressman,
You sent a letter to the EPA last fall asking for help about Piney Point. You never heard back from them until now. Your reaction to that?
Well, until the last week or two, as this is intensified, it became obvious to me, someone mentioned about engineers, this, that, whatever. I want to get the best minds and the best capability we can get on ground along with DEP, because I'm very concerned about, where we're at, these families clearly at risk with their homes, the farms, the businesses. And I was up in the helicopters, enough there, even if it's one home, we got to deal with it.
Disappointed you were ignored?
No, I think, I can't speak to that per se, but now I think everybody's focused on this, and you've got to get everybody focused. The county's got to take the lead, and then it's my job is to support them, as it is the governor's job, DEP, and what we've done with EPA. I think.
Thank you all. You'll get a notice when we are prepared to have an additional press conference as we get new information. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Congressman Vern Buchanan, County Administrator Scott Hopes here at the Manatee County Emergency Management Building, providing an update on the situation there in Piney Point. There you see 8 on your sides. Jeff Patterson speaking a little bit more here with Congressman Buchanan.
So, you know, I was here,
Listen.
Congressman, and you're well aware of this, that, you know, we were here in 2001. A different issue, but the same problem with Piney Point. What can you do long-term? You brought in resources for short-term. What can we do long-term so that we're not here again and again
Well,
and again?
Let me just say this. I co-chair the delegation in Florida. We're the third largest delegation. This isn't a Democrat or Republican issue. All of us understand water quality is a huge issue in and around state. So now that I think we've got everybody focused on this, I'm going to make sure that focus stays there and we get this problem addressed, because we can't continue on with over 1 billion gallons of water contaminated in this region. It impacts everybody and everything, in my opinion. And what, you know, I'm a water lover, like to be out in the water, like, you know, but I just think it really is concerning when we don't deal with these things. And it's not just Manatee County or other counties, but, you know, I could look at Sarasota, I can look at the breach in the pipeline from Longboat Key. I've been to Lake Okeechobee. I see what goes on over there. Enough's enough. So I'm angry about it, frankly, and I'm going to bring that intensity to make sure that we're doing what we've got to do to get this fixed. And I know the county's focused on it. The state is, hopefully. I believe they are. So now it's all of us working together, and I'm going to do everything I can to muster up the resources. I've been there long enough now. I know who to talk to and with, and we're going to bring the resources. It won't be a question of resources. I just want to make sure, even in the state, I want to make sure we got the best minds in terms of science. I don't want to waste taxpayers' money. But when we fix this, I want a permanent fix, and there's multiple options for the fix. There's not one. I don't have the answers on what those options are.
I gotta get the congressman in a briefing.
All right, thank you.
We'll be back.
Thank you.
Guys,
And that was 8